Hi everyone, welcome back to I See Melanie. Today we're going to be talking about the season 8 finale of Love is Blind. Now, I was almost completely wrong when it came to my predictions on who was going to get married at the end of this episode, but that's okay because I have to say this is probably the most entertaining episode of all the 12 or 13 that we were given. And so I was happy actually with this episode. I was happy with what happened for the most part. And yeah, we'll go into the details, but I guess we can start where they left off because that's the only really positive thing that came out of this episode. And that is the wedding that happened between Daniel and Taylor. So with Daniel and Taylor, I was pretty sure once they moved past that whole Instagram situation, I was pretty sure that they were going to end up married at the end. They weren't my favorite couple by any stretch. I thought they were pretty boring. I didn't really see much chemistry between them, but who am I to judge? They clearly were really infatuated and loved each other, so things worked out very well. And what I liked about them, even, going back to previous episodes, is that they are both really close with their parents, and they did a good job in integrating the two families together because it seemed as though there was a lot of communication between his parents, her parents, and that's a really great bonding experience, especially in a crazy 6-week getting to know you, then getting to marry you type of situation. And so I really liked the scenes with Daniel and his dad when they were in the change room, and he was just talking about all the different hopes and dreams he had for his firstborn son, and now his son is, off and is going to have a wife of his own. And also the scene with Taylor and her parents, I thought was so touching and actually brought a tear to my eye. It was very sentimental. It's very great to see, they had this great family moment when they thought that there was a very real possibility that the dad wouldn't be able to join. So I thought that was so beautiful. I also thought it was really nice that Daniel's sister played the song that Taylor walked down the aisle to. I thought was very sentimental again and again, bringing the family together and everything. And their vows and everything went off without a hitch as I expected, and very happy for them. Also, I guess I'm not really too shocked to learn that they hadn't consummated their relationship yet, but that's going to be happening, that night. So yeah, so with them, again, it's not really much to talk about because everything was pretty good. I hope for their sake that they're still together, and I guess I'll find out on Sunday if that is the case. Okay, so now that we've talked about the one successful marriage, let's talk about the other ones that just didn't come to be. So I assumed, as somebody who is pretty new to Love is Blind, that if a couple makes it to the altar, that pretty much means they're going to get married. But I've soon learned that it's pretty much there where they make the decision. It's like a game time decision, which, again, I think is such a crazy concept, but that made this episode the most interesting so far. Well, out of the regular episodes. So let's start off with Sara and Ben. So we left off right at the point where she is going to say either I do or I don't. And she says, I don't. And that she was looking for somebody on her wavelength, which I am very happy for Sara that she listened to her head and decided, maybe I shouldn't meet this guy who I've known for 6 weeks, who I don't really know how forthcoming he is. We don't really seem to have a lot of our core values in line, So yes, so she took this time to make that decision, obviously. And Ben, I was not impressed by Ben in any regard. So at that point, Ben's upset, which obviously I can grant him that must really suck. It must be very embarrassing. And then he mentions, okay, well, perhaps we could date. And she's like, yeah, about that. We can talk about it. She ain't going to talk about it. She don't want him. So I thought it was a little rude when she left and she's like, oh, I'm okay. I'll talk to you in the back. I thought that response was a little flippant and not the most considerate to Ben's feelings, but I don't really care because I don't like Ben, quite frankly. So when she talked to her mom and her sister about the reason why she decided not to pursue him, that he didn't know much about the George Floyd situation, especially something that happened right in his backyard. He was just incurious and he just didn't want to know. And the discrepancies in what he says, his church believes, or actually not even discrepancies, because he wasn't very upfront about what his church's stance is. And that when she saw a sermon that they'd done online, he said that, he didn't really know what their opinions are about like gay rights and things like that, which is like, really? Really? So here are my thoughts about Ben. I think one of two things. I think that he is either a really apathetic person who doesn't really give any thought to anybody else in society, any of the social issues of the day, of the politics of the day, voting and things like that, because he's like, oh, I guess my life is pretty good, so why do I need to care and use my mental energy to think about those things, which is bad. But I think more likely he is a closeted conservative. He's a conservative. And neither of those are great for somebody like Sara. And I don't think that she could be with somebody like that, because one of the things that I've seen people talk about online, and what I felt too, is like, you're compromising a lot of your strong beliefs to be with this man who, like, he seems like a nice enough guy. He's okay looking, but like, really, do you want to compromise that to be with somebody who you just met when you can find somebody who is more in line with you? So last week, I forgot to mention the situation with Ben and the lady from TikTok. So I was watching a YouTube show called Love is Kimes. I'll put a link at the bottom. And so the two people on that show were talking about Love is Blind. And one of the contributors mentioned that oftentimes when you see a scenario where the couple is in the living room of their apartment talking about something pretty major, that means it's a recreation of whatever scenario happened. And I was also watching a different video with Sara, and she confirmed that, yes, she saw the video on TikTok when they were out somewhere and they had to recreate it in the living room. And during that time, from going from the place to going from the living room, they were sequestered. They were separated from each other, so they couldn't have conversations. And so the conversation had on the couch, which in hindsight, that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, Ben was being very shady about the woman, saying he couldn't remember. It was 4 years ago. 4 years ago was not a long time ago. He said that they didn't sleep together, but then he remembered that they kissed, and he was just not being very forthcoming with that. And she's like, I don't like the fact that you don't remember things. And so I feel as though Ben knows he has skeletons in his closet. How severe they are, who knows? But I don't think he was a very forthcoming, honest person. And another thing I'm curious about is, when did he join this church? Because from things he hasn't said, it seems as though he's relatively new to this church versus, say, a church that he's gone to his entire life. And that could be because it's a different denomination of Christianity. Like, I have no idea. So I always find it interesting when people who are grown, like who are not teenagers, when they find a new religion, because a lot of times there's a reason for that. And it could be for good reasons behind it, or it could be for bad reasons behind it. Maybe they felt as though they were sinners before, and now that they're at this church, they don't feel like sinners. Who knows? I have no idea. It could be something completely mundane, nothing nefarious. I don't know, but I don't trust Ben. And so I'm very happy that Sara is no longer with him. And one thing I'll say is Sara and her sister's girlfriend, I saw a lot of people say that they came on really strong. But I think they knew who Sara was. They know what her personality is, and they know what she stands firm in. But I do think it was good that Sara and her mom and her sister were the only people in the truck when they were discussing things, because the sister-in-law, she is a little pushy, a little bit. So it was good that she just wasn't there. I do not want Sara to get back together with him. And the thing is with Ben, even though he has beliefs and things that I don't like and Sara doesn't like, that doesn't mean that he has to change. It doesn't make him a bad person or anything like that, because people have the right to believe whatever they want. And if it's not ideal for Sara, then she has the option, which she chose, not to be with him. So he doesn't need to be fixed per se. So yeah, they can't get back together because he is not going to fundamentally change for her, and he really shouldn't change fundamentally for her or for somebody else. He should change because that's something that he wants to do for himself. So, yes, I was very happy to see that. I was all done filming, and then an hour later, I remembered that I forgot something. So, that part where Ben is with his friends and they're consoling him after Sarah's left, and he puts his hands in theirs, and then after a few seconds, he catches himself and he's like, oh, this is getting weird. I am pretty sure that all those people in that church are a bunch of homophobes. So, yeah, Sarah made the good decision to leave him at the altar in her white dress. Now let's talk about Joey and Monica. So Joey and Monica, they were my favorite this entire time, and the only time I felt shaky about them was when Monica said in the confessional when they had that lunch at the conservatory that she wasn't quite sure how he felt and the love language discrepancies and so on. And so we see Monica get ready and she's very nervous and she voices that she's not sure how Joey feels and she's scared, which I would think that would be a horrible way to go into your wedding day. And she mentions that she is kind of basing her decision on what she thinks Joey is going to say. So that means that she doesn't have any confidence in their relationship. She doesn't think he has confidence in their relationship, but I think that she wanted to really be with him, which is so sad. So Monica came into the change room very unsure of things. And I think during that time of her prep getting ready, she was having a lot of real-time realizations in her mind. Then her guy friend is asking her how she felt the first time Joey kissed her. And so she mentioned that she was having sensory overload, adrenaline was going crazy, and that she doesn't remember how she felt per se, but she does remember he asked for consent, which is like, I don't know, when you're telling somebody the story of your first kiss, the consent part, consent's always good, but you can leave that part out. Like, that's not very romantic, a romantic retelling of the situation. But then he's like, okay. Have you guys kissed afterwards? Like, you've kissed since, right? And so I gleaned from Monica when our favorite guy, Dave, was asking everybody, hey, have you slept with your partners yet? And she didn't expressly say yes or no, but she said the way I show my love is through, physicality, something to that degree, something like that. And so I just assumed that they had sex before, but in listening to, things between the lines, I don't know if they have. And Monica's sister, oh my gosh, she just can't help herself. Like, oh, I'm here getting ready for your damn wedding. It's like, girl, that's so rude. It's so funny because I feel as though the sisters in this season are more opinionated and more vocal about their opinion than a lot of the women who are actually in the running to be married, which is interesting. So there's that element. And then with Joey in his dressing room quarters, so it was nice to meet his family. So his mom and the sisters and the dad and the dad's wife, because I had mentioned that we hadn't seen his family except for a cousin or a brother at the fitting. And so we learned that everyone loves Monica. But even from things he was saying, it was like, oh, like, are you really going to make the decision to marry her? And he seemed kind of shaky, even though he was saying, yes, she's great, and the family loves her, and that they'd all get along very well. And then, so when they get up to the altar, and he skateboards up there, and the sisters notice that there is a wheelchair at the end, and that is to commemorate and to include his sister who had passed away. And when the mother saw it, she started bursting out crying, which I would have done too, because that was a very evocative gesture. That was a very big gesture. And to me, it seems like a very meaningful gesture, as in, I want to include my sister who's no longer here with us physically, but I want to include her in my big day. So when I saw that, I was thinking to myself, yeah, he's going to say yes. Monica walks up and they give their vows. I don't know, I didn't feel as though their vows were very heartfelt in the delivery and even in the words. I can't remember everything that they said, but I got the feeling that, yeah, Monica was going to say no. And she said she doesn't feel as though they were ready yet, which I guess they aren't. One thing I was actually quite surprised to learn is that Monica had never told Joey that she loved him, which I didn't pick up on that. And I think that's kind of a big deal. So, and again, it could be that she doesn't love him romantically, or that she just doesn't want to say I love you because she wasn't sure if he was going to say I love you. And yeah, so I guess I'm just kind of disappointed because I do feel from the show's perspective, or maybe I don't even know whose perspective it is, but I didn't feel all this apprehension until the episode before the wedding. I thought they were going to go the distance. And at the end where Joey's talking and he says that he doesn't see, a potential future for them, like just to date. So I guess they weren't really into each other. I've seen other people say they had a friend's vibe, and so maybe that's it. But yeah, no, Joey and Monica, it's sad. Now let's go on to Virginia and Devin. This one I was surprised by. I actually gasped when Virginia said no. I thought things were going to go out differently, but let's start from the beginning. Okay, so we see Virginia. She goes to the dressing room and she has all her family there. And Virginia, she's a beautiful woman, but she kind of talks like she's like a zombie almost. Like she doesn't seem 100% there. She talks like she's tired or just very disinterested.
I feel good. He's just the kindest person, the kindest man I've ever been with. Really thoughtful and always like reassures me, and like he shows up for his commitments and he shows up for the kids all the time. And
anyway, so she gets there and she's talking about all these good things about Devin and so on, and then her mom's there. Her good friends are there, and her one friend, she was so interesting. I'm like, this girl, she wanted to be on TV. She wanted to make her mark on TV, and I cannot blame her.
Ecstatic. Brother man couldn't stop smiling. I said, okay.
But when she was talking about all these good things about Devin, I'm like, okay, well, she's going to marry him. And then, she meets the niece, or she sees the niece. And this is the first time I'm gleaning from the conversation that the parents hadn't met each other before, which I always think that's kind of questionable when it comes to things like this. But, whatever. And the mother and the sister were very happy for this day. And I can understand why. Virginia's a catch. We see her dad, we see her stepmother, and I noticed that the only time Virginia seemed to have some life in her voice was when her dad was cracking jokes. Because the other times she was just like a zombie, just droning on, but she actually sounded like a regular human being when her dad was making fun of her, which I thought was notable.
I never thought this day was gonna come.
y'all are so disrespectful. He said he gave up on me a while ago.
No, I did.
Let's talk about Devin. So, oh my gosh, Devin's niece was so cute. Oh, I just love the sound of little kids laughing. It just makes you feel so happy inside. She was adorable. And so, he's there. He's talking to his boys. He's talking to his dad. And one thing, okay, I think he's a nice guy. But I think he is a little coddled. And so in the last episode, I said he's 28. He's a young guy. 28 is young. I'm way older than 28, so of course I think it's young. But I do think I kind of infantilized him a little bit because, again, if you're 28, you're an adult. And if you're taking a wife, you're an adult as well. So when he was talking about, we've had the hard conversations, it's like, did you? Because first of all, I thought it was crazy that you only talked about politics when you got back home from your trip. And the entire time, Virginia was the one driving the discussion and trying to pull the answers out of you. I didn't quite catch this the last time, but when she asked him about politics, he said, my family votes conservative. He never said, I vote conservative. He never said, I voted for Trump. And so I think he was using that as kind of an excuse because, she said that she's a Democrat, she's a liberal. And so I guess he didn't want to really rock the boat. But the entire time, Virginia was the one who was driving the discussion, who was trying to pull the answers out of him. And on the topic of abortion, he failed, because it's one thing to talk about, the woman should have a conversation with the man, right? So if there's a couple, let's just say, and she even has access to this man anymore, I guess you can have a conversation about it. That's about, relationships and how people talk to each other. In terms of laws, the man has no bearing on it because it's her body. And I think I'm not going to talk about that right now, but people need to understand there's a difference. Like, yeah, you can talk to your husband about it, but he has no say. Sorry. Yeah, so you guys didn't have any hard conversations. Not really. And but I do think he's a nice person. I just don't think that at this point he is ready to be married, especially to somebody who is pretty established in who she is. She's established in her career, and she is looking to progress to even higher heights. I just don't think they were in line like that. And so when we get to the wedding and they're saying their vows, I think Devin's vows are very heartfelt. And I think her vows were heartfelt too, but they just, the things that they shared just weren't enough. And so she says she's not ready. And one thing I wish she said that she just said, no, I can't do this, because I don't think it's a matter of her being ready. I just don't think, and as she said later on, that they were in line with each other. I think she said, I'm not ready, to kind of soften the blow and to take onus to not make him feel so bad, because yeah, he felt bad. And I felt bad for him too when he got rejected in front of all his friends and family. So yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the women not being very forthcoming and steadfast in what they wanted from these guys. And again, if Devin wants to be a Black Republican, he has the right to be that way. He has the right to vote based on his faith or whatever. It's not a matter of right or wrong. Well, in the scheme of things, they're different. The two of them are different. And so, they don't have to do the exact same thing. They are two separate people. But if you don't have those core values and these kind of things are going to be an issue, or could be an issue for your relationship going forward, and you're not in sync, and especially Virginia's the one who has to do all the pulling to get answers out of you, then no, they're not in sync at all. So I wish she was a bit more forceful about it. And so when she leaves, her parents are like, oh my gosh, did this really happen? I did feel bad for Devin. I did feel bad for his parents. I felt bad for his mom. At least at that point I did. Because imagine seeing your baby, your son up there, being very vulnerable, about to get married, and, well, you think so, and the woman says no and she walks off. That would be, I think, even more devastating for the parents than even the people who were involved in the potential marriage. I felt bad for his mom up until a point when she said, I don't know what's wrong with these girls or these women. And you know what she meant by that, right? She meant these liberals, these Democrats, these modern women these days who think they can just treat men any which way. It's like, no, girl, your son wasn't up to scratch, okay? Sorry. I know he's hurt, I know you're hurt, but they were not a good match. And yeah, that's what's going to happen. And I thought it was a nice touch to have her aunt officiate the wedding. But in hindsight, I think the aunt knew that this wasn't going to happen, because she was, praising her niece and telling her that she loves her. But she did say, you've always been strong-minded. You've always been very instinctual. You had good instincts. You made wise decisions. And so she was saying, girl, you don't have to go through with this. You know in your heart of hearts that you guys aren't a good match. You're a good decision maker. You're very logical. You're very smart. Don't marry this guy. I think that was her aunt's code. And so at the end, when she's talking to her mom and she's talking to her friends in the car about how you couldn't do it. And, she feels bad in that moment. Of course she feels bad, because that wasn't what she wanted to happen. Well, this whole scenario to happen. And then later on, when she's in the confessional talking about it, she just reiterated those things about, how they were unaligned when it came to politics. And she was offended that he talked to her about voting with her faith in mind and things like that. But then she also mentioned that, they received a gift from one of his family friends that the mom mentioned, but Devin never mentioned anything about it, which I think is not a very good sign, again, for somebody who you don't really know and they don't mention this. Like, why can't she mention it? Because I'm sure if the person came and gave them a set of casserole dishes, he would have mentioned it. But because it's money and because they hadn't gotten married as yet, he could easily be pocketing that money. So that's not good. And again, she had her rightful reservations. That's why she had the prenup. Well, not reservations, but she was smart in thinking about, let's get the prenup and all these different types of things. And so, yeah, they just weren't a good match. He's not at her level, and he can have whatever beliefs he wants, but that's not good enough for her. And it wouldn't be good enough for me if I were in her shoes. But Devin does seem like a nice guy. I'm sure there's another Minnesota girl who is more in line with his needs and his mom and his family's needs. Because I do think, yeah, he's just a bit too much of a mama's boy, or too much of a defer to my parents type of boy guy. One last thing. An hour and 44 minutes is way too long for a Love is Blind episode, even if it is a grand finale and 4 weddings are going on in it. Way too long. Chop it in half, but also work on the editing. This is another episode that I couldn't watch on my nice big TV. I had to watch it on this little iPhone 14 Pro screen because I can watch it at 1.5 times speed on this thing. And I had to watch half of it on the treadmill to make the best use of my time. So Netflix, get better with the editing and be more considerate to the fan base, okay? Okay, so that's the end of the episode. Yeah, I guess I have learned from this situation not to assume anyone's actually going to get married if the 2 people are there at the altar. And yes, that is all. I will be doing a quick reaction to the teaser for the reunion episode, so stay tuned. I'll put a link to it right here. And yes, I'll see you in a few days to talk about the reunion special. And I will see you later. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and write your thoughts down, please. Let me know what you think about the situation and the things that I said. Okay, see you later, guys. Bye.